Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. As we celebrate women who are doing amazing things, we cross the world to find one woman who is serving God and serving God's people. Her name is Lana Vasquez, and she joins us all the way from Thailand. Lana, good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Sawadika.
So, Wabi Ka, even though it is evening in Thailand.
Yes, late night.
Late night. So tell us how you, a Southern California girl, came to be a missionary and the founder of Life Impact International.
Okay. Well, I was born and raised in Southern California, and I had never gone to a Christian church before, never stepped foot in a Christian church, was not really raised in church, went to church on Christmas and Easter. And I never really, I knew about Jesus and I believed in Jesus, but there was a disconnect. To me, Jesus was on the cross, on the wall, like a famous president. And I never knew how to ask him to come off that cross and into my heart and into my life. Lived a very quick, fast life. At 19, I was already hooked on drugs, drinking, go-go dancer in the clubs of Hollywood, a dancer for one of the #1 radio stations, Power 106, the Baker Boys, and just lived a really fast life. And at one point, actually, I just remember thinking I had tried everything. What else was there? There was nothing else. And I tried all the different scenes and all the different things. And even, I tried going to college. I tried just starting a career early. I tried all of that and nothing satisfied. And one day we were getting ready to go to a big Hollywood club premiere and for the Baker Boys, for Power 106. And my friends, we were all getting ready. We were all the premiere dancers. We were all getting ready. And out of nowhere, something tugged on my heart. And now I know what that something was. It was the Spirit of God, but tugged on my heart and said, pick up the phone and call your aunt. Well, my aunt had just 6 months prior become a Christian, and she was the first Christian in our family. And she'd come to the Mexican family barbecues, and she didn't cuss and she didn't drink. And we thought, what is wrong with you? Something is wrong with you. You don't cuss, you don't drink at the Mexican family barbecues. What is going on? And so we kind of ostracized her from our family and just kind of really pushed her away. And so 6 months I hadn't talked to her. So I picked up the phone and I called my aunt and I said, I'm down the road getting ready for a Hollywood club. Well, can I just, come over? And I made up something because I didn't know why I was calling her. And I said, and maybe you could dye my hair or something. And she just said, sure, honey, come over. And so I went up the street to my aunt's house. And this is a town, Simi Valley, California. So I have family members off every stoplight in that area. So she wasn't far from my friends. Went over there and went out. They were on their way out of the door. And I said, where are you going? And they said, we're going to church. And I said, it's Friday night. What are you doing going to church on a Friday night? I thought only old people went to church on a Friday night that had nothing to do. Like, what are you doing? And they said, well, do you want to go? And I said, sure, I'll go to church on a Friday night. I've never been to church on a Friday night before. And so they said, okay, well, honey, come in and change your clothes because you can't go to church dressed like that. I was getting ready to go to a Hollywood club. And so I said, okay, and I just didn't, it was so funny because I called my friends and I said, I'm going to church. And they said, you're going where? And I said, oh, don't worry. It'll be over by the time the club opens at 10. I'll make it just in time to get on that bus at 10:30. That's when everything opens anyways. Don't worry. I'll be on time. I'll be, little did I know that my life was going to forever change and I would never get on that bus.
Wow.
And so anyways, go with my family. All of a sudden I walked into this church and it was a outreach actually for the district, for like the partying district. I didn't know any of this. And it was a Friday night outreach and they do it for the Old Town Pasadena, all the clubs there. And they actually go witnessing and they bring in people and preach the gospel. And so I walked in and I saw all these young people and I thought, what are they doing here? And I saw them lifting their hands and I saw tears coming down their faces. And I thought, what is going on? They're young. It's Friday night. What is going on here? But the neat thing is I never once questioned what I felt like. even though I didn't understand it with my mind, what these people were doing and the lifting of the hands, I felt this warmth that I had never felt before. And I felt this feeling like, this feels good. I've never felt this. Whatever this is, this feels good. I'd never felt this before. And I'll never forget it. The preacher got up and he was cute. And I didn't think preacher was cute. And he was cute. And I just remember saying, what is going on? And he was cute. I'll never forget the message. It was just like yesterday. And he said, you've been trying to fill that hole in your heart with drugs, with alcohol, with relationships, with everything in this world. But don't you know that only Jesus can fill that hole in your heart? And he said, you have been searching all of your life, but you don't have to search anymore. The one you have been looking for, his name is Jesus, and he's standing at the door of your heart knocking. And if you let him, if you open it up and let him come in, you'll never thirst for anything ever again. You'll never look for love anywhere again. You'll never look for anything anywhere else. And at that moment, it was like I saw this open vision. And you have to understand, my parents were divorced at 13. And so, that comes with all the challenges. My dad was an alcoholic. He actually got radically saved and goes to the church that I got saved at. And as a part of leading him to the Lord, led my mom to the Lord now. So all of this is a redemption story, but I came out of such a broken place, such a broken home, such a broken life. Dad was an alcoholic, beat us, my parents divorced. And so just so much brokenness, and so the Lord just kind of, at that moment, I didn't know what an open vision was or anything like that. That was my first time stepping foot in a Christian church. And so I didn't know what any of this was, anything.
How did you know? How did you know in that moment, Lana, that you might be able to trust it? How did you know?
Because it felt like something that I had never felt before. Like I had tried so many different things, and this felt so different than anything else before. I couldn't deny it. Like I just couldn't. There was no denying what I felt, the presence that I felt, the peace. I had been searching for it in drugs, in men, in alcohol, and I could not find it. And for the first time, I found what I was looking for, and there was no denying it. Like it was undeniable. It was an undeniable peace and presence of God. And at that moment, it was like an open vision. And I saw all the it was like a old Hollywood film reel of my life. And I saw all the scenes, and I saw the boyfriend scene, the college, the career girl scene, the party scene, the club scene. I saw all these scenes, and the last one was blank. And I heard a voice that I'd never heard in my life before, but it felt so warm. And that voice said, the decision you make right now will change your life forever. And that part was blank. And at that same exact moment, the preacher gave the altar call. And he said, Jesus is standing here right now. Come up to the altar and you'll never be the same again. My cousin that was sitting next to me went to grab my hand to invite me to go up. She said that I already ran up and made a beeline to the altar, that I'd already gone up there. And when I was up there, and this was the marker moment in my life, I just remember just weeping and just crying. And I remember having my eyes closed and being so scared to open them because I just felt like a bright light, and I felt a presence there that I just couldn't deny. And I'm a very real person. I'm very black and white. What you see is what you get. I'm not going to fluff anything. I'm very justice. I'm very cut and dry, and very straight out. And so it needed to be something real. It couldn't be anything fake that I couldn't trust. It had to be something real. And so when I went there, it had to be that powerful to get me out of the life of sin that I was living. And at that moment, I just knew something was there. I knew I was scared to open my eyes. I thought Jesus or God would be standing on the other side if I opened my eyes. And I just was crying. And I just felt like this. Nobody told me to pray this, but I just put my hands out like this, and I said, God, I've made a mess of my life. My body is in a million pieces. My heart is in a million pieces. My mind is in a million pieces. At that time, what I left out is because we were partying so much and dancing so much, it's late hours. And so we would do drugs to stay up late. And because of that, I developed epilepsy. I actually had my license taken away and had to have had seizures and had to take medicine and different things. And that's why I said my body, my mind, everything was in a million pieces. But I said this prayer. I said, God, I give these million pieces to you. And if you can do anything with them, they're yours. I made a mess of this life that you gave me until 19 years old. But now at 19 years old, I give you back my life. And if you could do anything with it, use it. If you could do anything with these pieces, they're yours. I made a mess with what I did with it. Now it's time for you to do what you do with it. And I give it to you. And at that moment, it was like warm honey from the top of my head to the bottom of my feet. And wherever that honey touched, it cleansed and it made whole. And I felt like I had never sinned before. I felt like nothing had ever happened to me before. I felt just pure and clean and holy for the first time. I don't remember feeling like that since I was a little girl. I don't remember that feeling. And I couldn't stop smiling and I couldn't stop crying. And I knew something had happened to me. And when I went outside, it was like I saw in color again. The sky was blue and the grass was green. And I say to everyone, at that moment, I knew that I was rescued. And I knew that I was rescued to rescue. I knew that God had saved my life and rescued me for a special purpose. It was like a knowing that I know it could have been anybody else, but he rescued me to rescue.
Hold that thought. He rescued her to rescue. Stay on point for more of this incredible conversation right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This month and all year long, we celebrate ordinary women who are doing extraordinary work. And our guest this morning is Lana Vasquez, and she has been rescued to show others the redemption and the love of Jesus Christ. She's the founder of Life Impact International. And so in the last segment, we talked about that reckoning, that moment of being saved and giving those million pieces. So your life is forever changed in that moment, and you are indeed a new creation. So fast forward to being in California for your life, 19 years, and how do you get from California to ministry and missionary, becoming a missionary?
Okay. We're talking about many points here, but I'll shorten it. So at that moment, like I knew I was rescued to rescue. And there was two personal vendettas that I made towards God. One, I would rescue and fight for innocent children. And two, I would tell as many people about Jesus before the age 19, because nobody ever told me and nobody ever gave me a choice or an option. They never told me that I didn't have to live the life I was living.
When did you start drinking, Lana?
At 11 years old.
Wow.
When you have a dad that's an alcoholic, it's easy to go and get beers and put them on the side of your bed, you know, and start doing that. So at 11 years old.
And then so you know in that moment that God has saved you for such a time as you're living in this moment.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes, ma'am. And so God just did really a quick work in me. I was 19 years old. I went to this itty bitty Church of God in my hometown.
What does your mom say when you come home, Lana, and you tell her about this?
They all thought I was crazy.
Did they think you had joined a cult?
Exactly. So my aunt was the first Christian, and my aunt and my uncle, and I was the second. And so they just thought we were all crazy. You know, they all thought it was a fad, basically, is what they said, because I was already extreme. So whatever I did so extreme. That was my personality. And so they just thought this is just another one of Lana's extreme, you know, things, and it's going to be over and it'll be a fad. You know, it's just going to pass. But so during that time, like I'd invite my parents to church. church, just different things. So in that short amount of time, it was only a year actually that I was in California, and I just was in church every time the doors would open. No matter what, if it was a men's meeting, I'd sit in the back. I was so hungry for the word of God. I was so hungry for this new life, the newness of everything, the word of God for me. I didn't open the Bible a day in my life till I was 19. So it was like a treasure chest. And I was like just saying, oh, this and oh, this. And it was such a quick work. And I instantly started serving in children's church. And it was so funny because I wouldn't know the Bible stories because I wasn't raised with children's Bible stories. So I would study the children's Bible study the night before and then teach it. Within 3 months of being a Christian, that's how quick the Lord worked. And then I became a youth leader and was on the path to a youth pastor. And what had happened was there was a guy that had passed through that went to a certain Bible school, to Rhema, and he passed through. And I just remember him in the pulpit. I remember him he knew God in such a powerful way. And I just told God, if I'm going to do this Christianity thing, I want to do it like that. He knows you. He knows your power. And so that was I always say it's like a piece of the puzzle. I say it like this: the plan of God is never a direct shot. It's more like a connect the dots. It's like, hey, point A, B, C is down here, D. And then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, oh, that's what you were doing, And it's like a piece of a puzzle. You get the corner, you start with the corner edges, and then you start working, and then you look back and you see the picture. And so God was just putting pieces in my heart. But during that time, then there was a desire to go to Bible school. I just couldn't get the word of God in me. It was like an IV. I needed more of it. So I knew I was supposed to go to Bible school through a supernatural turn of events. I was only a Christian for 1 year and went to Bible school after just being a Christian 1 year.
Wow.
Somebody supernaturally paid my tuition, gave me a job, gave me a vehicle, just all kinds of things. And again, everyone thought I was crazy. My family thought I was crazy. My dad ended up getting saved on the trip, taking me to Bible school.
Wow.
And a whole nother God story. My mom ended up getting saved in between my first and second year of Bible school. And they're both right now just love Jesus, full on Christians, love the Lord, filled with the Spirit. But in all of that, so here's how I got to Thailand. When I was at Bible school, everybody was talking about your ministry, your ministry. You have to remember, I came from Hollywood. I came from the go-go clubs in California. Right. Nobody's talking about ministry over there. There's no Christians over there, we don't. And so I don't know what this word ministry means. So I remember walking around and saying, God, what is this word ministry? And am I called to this? What does this mean? And walking around and the Lord spoke to me and he said, all ministry is an overflow of what I've done in your life. Wow. And yes, you are called to it. And I said, God, you tricked me. I just came here because I wanted to know more of your word. I wanted to be able to tell more people about Jesus. You tricked me into this thing called ministry. And so that's how I got to Bible school. And then during Bible school is how I found out about my call. So I knew I was rescued to rescue. I knew that I wanted to work with children. I knew there was different pieces to the puzzle that I was getting. And I just remember when I was in Bible school one time, we were praying just about the plan of God in the future. And God gave me Psalms 127, verse 3 through 5. And it says, as arrows in the hand of a mighty man, so are children of the youth. They will not be ashamed, but they will subdue and conquer the enemy at the gate. And I looked and I knew what God was saying. He was basically telling me that I'm going to do children's homes and that these children, I'm going to raise them up to know him and to make him known. And I said, God, but I'm an evangelist. I want to win hundreds, thousands, millions to you. I don't want to have a little children's home with 10 children and raise them up and be like Little House on the Prairie and hold their hands and go up to heaven singing Kumbaya. I want to change nations. And he spoke to me and said, Lana, you will reach more through these children than you will ever reach alone. In the Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu nations of the world, you'll raise up a generation to know me amongst generations that don't know me, and that generation will make me known to their own nation.
So this is a lot to process. Let's take a break here. And when we come back, I want to see how you unpack all of that. Stay on point, everybody. We're back right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. This is why we wake up every single morning, because we want every single person who listens and watches to figure out what God has called them to and for. And why are we here? The fruit is not on the tree for the tree. The fruit is on the tree for the people.
Yes.
And so you go out and you have this powerful, very lofty word from God. How do you unpack it? How do you
Yeah.
start the work?
Yeah. Okay. So in that, those are the things I knew. So I know I'm supposed to raise up a generation to know him amongst the Buddhist, Muslim, Hindu nations of the
But
world. Remember,
that's gargantuan.
it's
I mean,
so broad. I know I'm rescue to rescue. You have to remember, this is 19 years ago, before anybody knew about child trafficking, child exploitation. Like, nobody knows about this stuff yet, you know? And so all of a sudden God starts talking to me about rescuing children. I'm 20. At that point, I'm only 23 years old. So I don't know where to start. I don't know how to start. I just, again, another piece of the puzzle, another dot in the connect the dots. And so in between all of that, so I'm praying about this. I'm sharing my heart with people. I'm sharing with different things. I go back in between my first and second year of Bible school. And that time you're supposed to kind of pick in what you're going to focus on. And I knew, like, somebody asked me this question: what would you do every day of if you can do something for the rest of your life and never get tired of it, what would you do? And I knew for me, it would be working with children. And I knew, like, not really, not just a teacher like that. I love that. I appreciate that. But I wanted to work with street children, like the dirtiest, like lice in their hair on the streets. I wanted those children, I would love to scrub them and clean their faces and feed them. And so I knew that I wanted to work with children, and I wanted to work with at-risk and exploited. Like, I just knew it in my heart. So anyways, I was in between, during that time in between, I was back at my itty bitty Church of God in California, went back home from Tulsa, Oklahoma during this time, and still praying about that, saying, God, what do I choose next year? Which avenue do I go? I want to work with children, but the only option for me is Sunday school, and, you know, to be a Sunday school teacher. But I know there's not an orphanage option, right, or a children's home option, or a rescuing, fighting child trafficking, human trafficking option 19 years ago, right? There's not these other options at Bible school. You could either be a preacher, teacher, and I knew I was also an evangelist. Like, I knew that, but I knew that there was another side with working with children. And so anyways, I'm praying about this. All of a sudden, a missionary comes from this place called Sao Paulo, Brazil. And he gets in the pulpit and he talks about 300,000 street kids in the streets of Sao Paulo. And he talks about the police, the store owners paying off the police to line the children up to massacre them, and that they'll dump their bodies in the sewages, and that you can walk by and smell the bodies of rotting children, because it's just such a problem that they just want to get rid of them. They just look at them like flies. They look at these little lives and these children like flies, like a problem that they just need to get rid of. And I also heard that you'll see 5-year-olds, he starts talking about, you'll see 5-year-olds going and sniffing glue, but not just because they're hooked on drugs, but to kill the hunger pains, because there's more kids on the streets and there is food in the dumpsters to feed the kids on the streets. The kids on the streets have outnumbered the food in the dumpsters, and so they're killing the hunger pains, and glue is cheaper than food for these kids. And so he starts talking about this. Tears start streaming down my eyes. Like, I cannot stop crying uncontrollably. Like, this just comes and overwhelms my heart. And all of a sudden, during the Sunday school break of the 2 services, the pastor's wife comes over to me and says, Lana, what do you want to do for the Lord? And out of the inside of me says, I want to work with exploited children internationally. And all of a sudden, my aunt's sitting next to me, and she's never heard me verbally say this. Nobody has ever heard me verbally say this. And she said, you do? And I said, I guess that's what I said. You know, that's what I said. And so it came out of me. It came out of my mouth. And that was the main piece of the puzzle. I knew that that's what I was supposed to do. Right when I heard that, I knew. So I talked to that Brazilian missionary, and I said, as soon as I graduate from Bible school, I'm going to come work with you. I'm going to come to Sao Paulo. I'm going to come work with the street kids. I'm your girl. I'm going with you to Brazil. And as soon as I graduate Bible school, that's what I'm going to do. Lord's spoken to me. God's spoken to me. I already know what I'm supposed to do. So that's what my face was set. That's what I thought. That was the next piece of the puzzle. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought it was Brazil all the way, and that was what I needed.
Mm-hmm.
That's the picture of what I had in my heart. I finally heard it and I finally saw it in real time. And so, in all of that, again, so I started making preparation. I started learning Portuguese. I started finding all my Brazil friends. I started singing Portuguese worship songs. I'm Mexican. We speak Spanish, not Portuguese. So, I started heading towards Brazil. And to make a long story short, during that time, all of a sudden I was graduating Bible school, and I was in the shower, and I heard the Lord say to me, "Stay back in Tulsa one more year." And I cried, and I said, "No, God, I'm going to Brazil. Like, no, like here I am saying, 'Here am I, send me, Lord.' And you're not sending me. I don't want to stay in Tulsa. I want to go to Brazil and work with street kids in Brazil." And just crying, and saying, "God, please, please, no." And so anyways, I'm staying behind in Tulsa. I meet some missionaries. They all of a sudden come to me and say they want to start a rescue home. And they said the first country is going to be Thailand. The second country is going to be Mexico. The third one's going to be Africa. The fourth one, I don't remember anymore, but the fifth one is Brazil. And I said, okay, God sent me here to meet you guys. I know I'm supposed to go to Brazil. And so I commit 2 months to all these countries. But when I get to Brazil, I'm going to live there. And so that's how I started. That's how I ended up in Thailand. And then that's another God story.
Wow. And so how long have you been in Thailand now? And how did you get from Brazil to Thailand?
Keep in mind, I only committed 2 months, and 2 months was committed in Thailand.
And this was 19 years ago, or almost 20 years ago.
19 years ago. I was 24 years old. So as soon as we land, we started with 52 children. It was a prevention home. And during this time, there were more pieces of the puzzle given. We knew that these missionaries that God had connected us with, they came to me. They didn't have children of their own. And they came to me and they said, "Lana, the Lord has spoken to us, and we're supposed to do children's homes." And he said, this was our motto. We've heard their cries, we've planned their escape, and we're going to free the captives. And he said, this is what's happened. The Lord has heard their cries, and we're going to rescue them. They're not going to be forsaken anymore. And so that was the whole thing. And the plan was to prevent, to rescue, to heal. 19 years, that has never changed. And so the first step was starting a prevention home, a prevention project, a prevention work. So we started with 52 kids. I was just supposed to help pioneer that. I was never supposed to be mama forever. And when I landed as just a missionary to help start the homes and then go on to Mexico and Africa and then Brazil ultimately. So I landed, met these 52 kids. The first girl that came up to me, she's my Thai Karen daughter. She came up to me, she's 14 years old, and she said, "I don't have a mom and you don't have a daughter. From this day forth, you're my mom and I'm your daughter." And she just took my heart. I couldn't leave these kids. And 2 months turned into 6 months. At 6 months, the missionaries asked me if I would become the director of the home and if I would stay on longer. And I just fell in love with the kids. I couldn't leave them again. I became mom to them. 6 months turned into a year and a half. And at a year and a half, the missionaries said, actually, we can't keep this running. We're going to close the homes. Will you fully take over all the children's homes? Will you fully take over these children? At that time, we had a girls' and a boys' home, 52 kids. And will you take over everything? So I went to the mission field at 24, but became mama to 52 kids full on at 25 and a half and took over all of the responsibility.
Wow. Hold that thought. We're going to take a break here, but when we come back, we're going to talk about the miracles that have happened over these 19 years for these children and for Lana. Stay on point. We're back with more right after this. Welcome back, everybody, to the OPT Network. What we love about finding purpose is that when you find your purpose and you start to work and walk in it, God always makes and brings the provision. Our guest this morning is Lana Vasquez, and we're talking about her ministry and her mission. She's the founder of Life Impact International. And before we went to break, we were talking about how all of the things of God work together to bring you to Thailand. And when you get there at 25 years old, You become mother to 52 children, barely even experiencing the world yourself. Talk about the impact of that, and how do you begin to process that? Because that's not what you really had bargained for.
No, no, it wasn't what I'd bargained for at all. And I always say it's funny, but people don't like when I say that God tricked me, but it's a yielded life. When you live a life of yes, where God always has your yes, no matter what it is, where you don't hold back your yes to God. It's, you just
that's
flow.
powerful. You don't hold back your yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what God always knows. At the end of the day, he has my yes. And no matter what it is, the answer is yes before he even asks, and so it is a walking through. And I became mama, to 52 kids.
But not just 52 kids that are children without problems, 52 kids with so many problems that you have to have God.
Yes. And that, sometimes we were just talking about it recently. Sometimes I want to go back to those days. I'm 43 now. This has been doing this for 19 years. Now have been preventing, rescuing, healing hundreds and thousands of children. And now we're in 3 nations, in Thailand, Burma, and Brazil. We have 3 homes actually in Burma. We have 3 properties here in Thailand, 145 children, and then also we, our HEAL, which is our aftercare, and we work with the government and rescue. And in all of this, like now, as big as everything is God, I've done it for 19 years. I still want to go back to when I was 24 and 25, because I remember I had nothing else but God. And I would get on my knees every day and just say, show me what to do. I have no clue how to do this. I've never been in ministry before. My first experience in ministry was on the mission field. I'd never done anything like this before. I'd never been a mom before. I'd never been,
so now you're having to, because you're so new to ministry and the mission field, the miracles that will ultimately happen, you really have to put your faith out there, because you have to have God show up.
Oh, that's exactly it. It's sink or swim. You know what I mean? Like you're completely dependent on him. Like you have nothing else out here. There is nothing. I live on the Thai-Burma border. There is war over my border right now. We have nothing else but God. He is he is the only option. And so on our knees every morning, and he would show us what to do. He would tell us what to do. He'd show us what to say. I remember with one boy, and he was 7 years old, and he was such an angry boy, and we had rescued him. What had happened was the grandfather had raped the mother, the daughter, and then he was a product of that. And so she went crazy his mom went crazy, and she became like the town prostitute because her mind couldn't cope that she was raped by her own father. So Jack, at 7 years old, he'd have to go and he'd have to basically steal food. He'd break into houses, he'd steal food, he'd have to fend for himself. He said he would hold a blanket and he would rock himself to sleep and say, "This blanket's my mom, this blanket's my mom." And basically he'd steal to eat. He would just break into houses and steal food to eat. So he raised himself at 7 years old. And I remember when we got him, his first day at school, he had already punched someone, and they called and said, he's beating up, he's trying to hit the girls. Come right now, come. So I pulled up, and he had his fist like just ready to hit one of our little girls. And so I just went, I just said, stop. And we get him in the middle, and we're all talking to him. Everyone's talking to him. And I just heard God speak to me. I heard the Spirit of God speak to me and said, pull him close to you and hold him tight. And so I just went in, I pulled him close and I held him tight. He said, now tell him he doesn't have to fight anymore. Tell him he doesn't have to be scared anymore. Tell him he doesn't have to fight for himself. Tell him he doesn't have to protect himself anymore. Tell him that you're going to fight for him. Tell him that you're going to protect him. Tell him that he's safe now and he's free to be a kid now. And so I just held him and I said, you don't have to fight anymore. You don't have to protect yourself. We're going to fight for you. You can be a kid now. You can be a son now. You're safe now, Jack. It's going to be okay. We're your mother now. You don't have to fend for yourself. That little angry boy broke in my arms and started weeping and started crying. And he got up and had this smile, and it was like this anger, and this scared little boy that was fending for himself didn't have to fight anymore. He was free to be a child. I said, you're free to play. You're free to be a child. We're going to fight for you. You don't have to fight for yourself anymore. You don't have to protect yourself. And it was just things like that. I don't have training in psychology and counseling and working with trauma children. I don't have any of that. We weren't social workers. We weren't any of this. It was listening to the Spirit of God of what to say to these children, of how to handle these cases, of what to do, and just getting on our knees and saying, God, show us what to do to heal these children, to bring healing, to rescue these children. Let us be at the right place at the right time where the next child's going to be sold or trafficked or prostituted, Lord, and just being led by His Spirit all of this way. We had no clue what we were doing, and it was the best thing probably for us. Wow. All we had and all we still have is the Spirit of God leading us here.
Tell us briefly about the Promised Land.
Yes. Okay. So I have 25 acres, and basically it was a piece of property that was owned by the Thai, Chinese, Burmese mafia. We're on the border of Thailand and Burma, and so it was supposed to be a gambling, brothel, casino resort. So it was every evil work was supposed to be there. At that time, I had 60 children, and we were living in, I call it a concrete jungle because there wasn't even a patch of grass. It only had 5 bedrooms, and I had children all over, children shoved everywhere. It only had 2 bathrooms at that time, and we were rescuing babies because babies were going for $18 on our border. Wow. And nobody would take in babies. And if we didn't get a baby within 72 hours, that baby would end up in the hands of traffickers or even worse. And so even worse than that. And so basically it was a time we had babies. So I had babies everywhere, and we didn't have any place for them. So we had to put them in the bed of the truck, and we were desperate for land. At that time, I didn't even have money for rice. I didn't even know how we were going to feed the children. We would get calls from the local clinic, and basically they'd say, we have a baby. And I'd say, I can't even feed the children I have. Like, babies cost $300 between the Pampers and the formula and the baby mama, the caregiver. And I said, please, can you send the baby somewhere else? And they said, there is nowhere else. Nowhere else would take babies. So we were just desperate. It was at a really desperate time in our life. And at that point, I had to go back to America for Larissa Brown, Larry Brown's daughter. She was graduating from Bible school, and I knew God said that one day she would be my children's home director, and to put her on a plane to come and take care of my babies over here, or else a nice, handsome young man would swoop her up. So I needed to get her for my children's homes before another person got her. And so I spent the last money I had. I only had $500 in my bank account. And I remember looking at my air conditioning unit, which costs about $500, and saying, when I get back, I need to sell that for rice. Now, if you've ever lived in Thailand and know how hot it is, if you're going to sell your one air conditioning unit, you're in a very desperate spot. Air is a commodity here. And so I thought, okay, my last resort is I'll sell that for rice. Spent all that I had, went to America with nothing, didn't know how I was going to buy rice when I got back. At that time, I had some friends that asked me to come and stay with them. I stayed with them, hadn't seen them in 10 years. Those friends started talking to me, and they said, Lana, what's your $1 million God dream? And I remember saying, oh, you American, my $1 million God dream. I just need rice for my babies. But out of my spirit said, I need land so I can rescue children and not worry about rent and not worry about space and not worry about food because we could live off the land. I need land. And so anyways, my friend keeps pulling out that dream, and I'm just frustrated. I'm tired. I'm jet lagged. I'm stressed about money. So I just said, okay, this is it. He said, you need $500,000. And I said, $500,000, that's a pipe dream for me. I need
$500 for my
rice. I need rice, 500,000. And so I started heading upstairs, just grumbling, 500,000, you American, 500,000. I just need rice for my babies. And just grumbling in my head. And so and I just said, don't wake me up tomorrow. I'm tired. I'm a little stressed. I just need to sleep. I'm jet lagged. Please don't wake me up tomorrow. I'll help myself. Just leave me. And so I went up to bed, and I just remember I was still just so offended and so upset about that. And I just laid in the bed. I said, God, I'm doing everything you asked me to do. I'm doing everything you told me to do. You told me to prevent, rescue, and heal. You told me that I was rescued to rescue. You're the one who called me to rescue. I'm not doing this with my own idea. I'm doing what you called me to do. I'm doing the best I know to do. I don't don't know what to do anymore. I said this out of my mouth. I said, something has to give. Something has to give. I'm doing everything you asked me and called me to do. And at that moment, a tear just dripped from my eye. I was just at the last point. And I went to bed that night. In the morning, I woke up to his wife shaking the bed saying, Lana, get up, get up. They're going to get you your land. They're going to build you your homes. Get up, get up. And he said, Aaron got you a meeting with his boss. He's the largest custom home builder in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They're looking for an orphanage to support.
Wow.
Get up. You have a lunch meeting with them. They're going to help you. Get up. And as I started to sit up, the Lord spoke to me and he said, and I did it all while you were sleeping. I don't need you to figure it out. I don't need you to worry how you're going to feed my children, how you're going to do my ministry on the earth, how you're going to fulfill my call on your life. I don't need you to figure it out. I don't need you to worry about it. I don't need you to stress about it. I only need you to trust and obey me, Lana. Can you do those two things? Can you trust me and can you obey me? And I said, yes, sir. And so now, in a turn of events, I went to Tulsa with no money. I ended up coming back from Tulsa with $120,000, and it was designated for land. And I said, God, this is great, but I still need rice for my babies. I still don't remember how we got rice, but I had designated land. Now we have the promised land, 25 acres. We just built our 17th family-style safe home, worship center, girls vocational center. There's so much on it that and we actually just got the property adjoining to it, a boys promised land as well, with boys vocational, a little gym, indoor playground, computer labs, all of it just cash paid for. And the Lord spoke to me and said, I did it all while you were sleeping.
Wow.
I did it all while you were sleeping.
Oh, Lana, what an incredible story. Before we've got to let you go, tell people how they can connect with you and how they can sow into your mission and into your ministry.
Absolutely. So we're on Life Impact, www.lifeimpactintl for international.org. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We're on all of it just for Life Impact. And you can go on there. You can donate online. You could just be a part, follow us on social media. You can see about the latest rescues and the different countries that we're in, and just support us, get the word out, just be a part of what we're doing. Let us be your hands and feet to these children in these days on the earth.
Lana, thank you so much, and thank you for your obedience. You are absolutely amazing.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Indeed. Hey, everybody, stay on point. We're back right after this.